My mother smiled when she said it. That was the part one still can't forget. The business was built on my ideas, she said, folding her hands neatly on the conference table. I've always been the creative one. The room hummed softly, the sound of an expensive office trying to pretend it wasn't listening. The lawyer across from us nodded, as if this were obvious, already settled. My aunt dabbed her lips with a napkin, avoiding my eyes. And I sat there, quiet. Still, invisible in the way I'd been trained to be. Mom leaned back, confident now. She helped, she added, gesturing vaguely in my direction. But inspiration came from me. Helped. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the old reflex to shrink, to let it go, to keep the peace. Family dinners depended on it. Holidays. Silence. But this time was different, because tucked inside my bag, wrapped in a plain blue folder, was something she had never expected me to keep. They didn't know what I had already done. The lawyer cleared his throat. So just to be clear, he said, "You're asserting original authorship over the product design?" "Yes," my mother said smoothly. "From the beginning." The beginning. I remembered the beginning very clearly. The late nights at my kitchen table. The notebooks filled with sketches. The prototype that burned out my laptop and nearly my savings. I remember the way she'd laughed when I first explained it. "That's cute," she'd said, "but no one's going to buy that." I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct her. I watched the room accept her version of events because it was easier, because she said it like truth was a family heirloom she'd inherited automatically. The lawyer turned to me then. "And you?" he asked. "Do you dispute this?" Every eye shifted. My mother's smile tightened, just slightly. A warning. A reminder of who raised me. I looked down at my hands, then at my bag. "I don't dispute memories," I said slowly. "I dispute records." The lawyer blinked. "Records?" I reached in my bag and placed the blue folder on the table. My mother laughed softly. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, "this isn't necessary." I opened the folder anyway. The sound of paper unfolding seemed too loud in the quiet room. "This," I said, keeping my voice steady, "is the patent registration." The smile slid off her face. Not dramatically, just enough. The lawyer leaned forward. "Patent?" "Yes," I said. "Filed 7 years ago. Granted 5. I slid the document toward him. He adjusted his glasses, scanning quickly at first, then slower. My aunt stopped fidgeting. My mother's fingers curled into her palm. "That's not what this is about," she said sharply. "This is a family matter." "It stopped being that," I replied, "when you claimed ownership of something you never built." Her eyes flashed. "You wouldn't have had the idea without me," she snapped. "I encouraged you." Encouraged. The word echoed like an insult dressed as affection. "The law doesn't recognize encouragement as authorship," I said quietly. The lawyer looked up now, cautious. "Your name," he said to me, "is the sole inventor listed." "Yes," I said. "And this registration predates the company's formation," he added. "Yes." My mother stood abruptly. "This is manipulation," she said. "She's rewriting history." I met her eyes. "No," I said. "I preserved it." Her voice dropped. "You do this to me?" I thought of all the times I'd swallowed my credit to protect her image. All the meetings where she spoke over me. All the interviews where my name never appeared. "I did this for myself," I said. The lawyer closed the folder gently. "We'll need to reassess ownership claims," he said. My mother stared at the patent like it might vanish if she refused to acknowledge it. "You always were ungrateful," she muttered. I stood. "I was patient," I said. "There's a difference." The room stayed silent as the weight of the paper settled in. Because the patent didn't just protect an idea. It proved who had carried it alone. My mother didn't sit back down. She stood there with her hands braced on the table, staring at the patent registration like it had personally insulted her. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls closer, as if truth had a way of stealing space from comfort. "That paper doesn't tell the whole story," she said finally. The lawyer didn't look up. "It tells a very important one." I stayed quiet. I had learned long ago that when people feel exposed, they talk themselves into corners if you let them. "You wouldn't have survived without my support," my mother continued, voice rising. "I let you live at home. I fed you. I listened to you ramble on about this thing for months." I nodded slowly. "You did," I said. "You listened, not created." Not designed. Not built. Listened. The lawyer flipped to another page. According to this, he said, the first filing includes detailed schematics and functional claims. Yes, I said, because the idea was already complete. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. I remember you working on it, she said to my mother, trying to help. Late nights, right? My mother seized on it. Exactly. I was there. I helped her think it through.
I looked at my aunt. Do you remember what it did? I asked gently. She hesitated. Well, not exactly. I turned back to the lawyer. The prototype was finished before anyone else knew it existed, I said. Including my mother. My mother laughed sharply. That's not true. It is, I replied. Because I didn't tell you until it worked. The memory rose sharp and clear. The night I finally got it to function the way I'd envisioned. The hum of the machine. The moment I sat back on my kitchen floor, shaking, realizing I'd done it alone. I'd called her then. Not to ask for credit. To share the relief. She'd told me to get some sleep. The lawyer looked up. Ms. Carter, he said to my mother, were you involved in development or reduction to practice? She frowned. I don't know what that means. It means, he clarified, did you materially contribute to the invention itself? She hesitated too long. I inspired it, she said finally. Inspiration, the lawyer replied evenly, is not inventorship. The room went very quiet. My mother's face hardened. You're taking her side. I'm taking the law's side, he said. She turned to me then, eyes sharp and hurt layered together. You're erasing me, she said. The accusation stung, but not the way she wanted it to. I'm defining myself, I replied. You're just not at the center of it. Her mouth opened, then closed. What I didn't realize then, I said softly, was how much you needed my success to feel like yours. That landed. She looked away first. The lawyer closed the patent folder and stacked it neatly with his notes. This changes the foundation of ownership claims, he said. Any company built on this patent derives value from the inventor. My mother scoffed. So what, she owns everything now? No, he replied. But she owns the idea that made it possible. The distinction mattered. It always had. My mother grabbed her purse. This meeting is over, she snapped. The lawyer didn't stop her. As she headed for the door, she turned back once. You think this makes you powerful, she said. But all it does is make you alone. I held her gaze. I've always been alone with my work, I said. Now I'm just honest about it. The door closed behind her. My aunt exhaled shakily. The lawyer looked at me, something like respect in his eyes now. Do you have additional documentation? He asked. Yes, I said. Good, he replied. Because this isn't finished. I gathered my bag, feeling the familiar mix of ache and clarity settle in my chest. My mother had told her story for years. But stories fade. Records don't. And the next time we met, it wouldn't be about who remembered what. It would be about who could prove it. The follow-up meeting was scheduled without my mother's input. That alone unsettled her. She showed up late, sunglasses still on, confidence forced back into place like armor she hadn't had time to polish. I arrived early. Again. The lawyer had requested supporting materials. I brought more than that. I brought the years she'd chosen not to remember. He started the meeting without pleasantries. Ms. Carter, he said to my mother, you've asserted conceptual ownership. We now need to address legal ownership. My mother removed her sunglasses slowly. This is excessive, she said. We're family. I didn't react. The lawyer turned to me. You mentioned additional documentation. I nodded and slid a second folder onto the table. Thicker than the first. This includes the provisional filing, I said, the conversion to non-provisional, and the assignment. The lawyer's head snapped up. Assignment, he repeated. Yes. I opened the folder and turned it so he could read. The page sat there quietly, doing what paper always does best, telling the truth without raising its voice. My mother leaned forward, squinting. "What is that?" she demanded. "A patent assignment," I said. "Signed." The lawyer scanned it quickly. "Executed 5 years ago," he said. "Before commercialization." My mother laughed once, sharp and incredulous. "That's impossible," she said. "You never told me." I met her eyes. "I didn't need permission," I said. The lawyer looked up. "This assigns all rights to." He paused. "To the company," he finished. "Under your sole authority." My mother's breath hitched. "You transferred it?" she asked me. "Without me?" "Yes," I said. "Because it was mine to transfer." The memory rose again, clear as glass. The night I sat alone in a coffee shop, signing the paperwork with a hand that trembled only once. The attorney had asked if I was sure. "Once it's assigned, you can't take it back." I'd nodded. Because I wasn't protecting leverage. I was protecting longevity. The lawyer leaned back, expression thoughtful now. "This means," he said carefully, "the company's core intellectual property is traceable to you alone." My mother stood abruptly. "You cut me out," she said. "You always planned to." I shook my head. "I built something. You attached yourself to it." Her eyes flashed. "I raised you." "And I grew," I replied. The room went silent again. The lawyer closed the folder. "This significantly weakens your claim," he said to my mother. "Any assertion of creative ownership is contradicted by legal record." She looked at him like he'd betrayed her. "You're supposed to help us," she said. "I'm supposed to follow evidence," he replied. She turned back to me, voice shaking now. "You signed something that affects all of us." "I signed something that protected what I built," I said. "Long before you wanted it." She laughed bitterly. "You think you're so independent." I leaned forward. "I am," I said. "That's what scared you." The lawyer cleared his throat. "We'll need to restructure the ownership narrative," he said. "Public statements included." My mother froze. "What statements?" she asked. "Marketing," he said. "Press. Investor decks. Anywhere authorship is implied." Her face went pale. She knew exactly what that meant. Years of subtle credit. Casual claims. Stories told as fact. All of it now vulnerable. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door again. "This isn't over," she said over her shoulder. I didn't answer. Because I knew something she didn't yet understand. This was never about winning an argument. It was about making the truth too documented to deny. And the next step would make it public. The email went out at 8:03 a.m. Not dramatic. Not accusatory. Just precise. Updated intellectual property attribution attached. Please review prior to investor briefing. I read it twice before closing my laptop. This was the moment things stopped being private. My mother called me at 8:11. I didn't answer. She texted instead. "What did you do?" No question mark. Just accusation. By 9 o'clock, the company's legal counsel had finalized the revised materials. Every deck. Every website footer. Every about the founder paragraph that had once used soft language like family-led or conceptual guidance now used one name. Mine. What I didn't realize then was how fragile a story becomes once it has to survive contact with records. My mother arrived at the office unannounced just before lunch. She didn't wait at reception. She walked straight into the conference room where the investor briefing was about to begin. She looked furious and scared. "You blindsided me," she hissed, grabbing my arm the moment the door shut. "You made me look like a liar." I gently removed her hand. "I corrected the record," I said. "There's a difference." She laughed, but it cracked halfway through. "You're rewriting history," she said. People are going to think I took credit for your work. I held her gaze. You did, I said quietly. Her face flushed. I believed in you, she snapped. That counts. Belief doesn't file patents, I replied. The door opened behind us. The lawyer stepped in, folder in hand. We're ready, he said, then paused when he saw her expression. Is there a problem? Yes, my mother said sharply. This narrative, this attribution, it's wrong. He didn't argue. He simply opened the folder and handed her a printed packet. Everything here is sourced, he said. Public filings. Dates. Signatures. She flipped through it quickly at first. Then slower. Then she stopped. On the patent page. On the assignment. On my name. Alone. This will humiliate me, she whispered. I softened my voice, but not my words. It will clarify things, I said. That's uncomfortable when you've benefited from confusion. Her eyes filled, not with tears, but with something closer to disbelief. You would do this publicly, she asked. To your own mother? I took a breath. You did it publicly first, I said. I just stopped correcting people in private. The lawyer cleared his throat. The investors are waiting, he said. And accuracy matters. My mother straightened slowly, pride flickering back into place like a reflex. Fine, she said. Let them hear it. She took a seat at the table, chin lifted. But when the presentation began, something was different. The slides didn't defer to her. The story didn't orbit her presence. The timeline began with my work, my filings, my milestones. She watched it unfold like a stranger watching someone else's memories. At one point, an investor asked, "So you're the inventor?" I answered before she could. Yes, I said. No qualifiers. No apologies. My mother didn't speak again for the rest of the meeting. Afterward, she pulled me aside one last time. You think this makes you strong, she said. But people don't forgive this kind of thing. I looked at her. Really looked. At some point, I said, strength is choosing truth over being liked. She shook her head, backing away. This will cost you, she said. I nodded. I know, I replied. I decided it was worth it. As she left the building, I felt the weight of years lift just slightly. Not because she finally understood, but because I had stopped asking her to. And the next phase wouldn't involve meetings or lawyers. It would involve consequences she couldn't talk her way out of. The audit didn't start with accusations. It started with questions. Simple ones. Who approved this language? When was this claim first made? Which materials referenced original ideas, without attribution? Questions have a way of unraveling stories when stories were never meant to be examined closely. My mother found out about the audit the same way everyone else did, through a neutral email sent to all senior stakeholders. As part of routine compliance, we'll be reviewing historical representations related to intellectual property. Routine. That word infuriated her. She called me that evening, voice tight, controlled in the way that meant she was furious but trying not to sound like it. You set this in motion, she said. I didn't request an audit, I replied. Accuracy did. She scoffed. You think they'll stop at marketing language? I paused. No, I said honestly. They won't. The truth was, once the patent registration became central, everything connected to it came under scrutiny. Royalty assumptions, compensation structures, speaking fees, consulting payments. Things she'd always considered hers. What I didn't realize then was how much of her identity had fused with the story she told about herself. Not just to others, but to herself. The auditors were polite, thorough, unimpressed by emotion. They asked for emails, drafts, notes. They compared timelines. They noticed how often my name was missing from early materials, and how often hers appeared instead. Not because she'd forged anything, because she'd spoken first. And no one had corrected her. Until now. One afternoon, an auditor asked to speak with me alone. "We're not here to assign blame," she said. "But we do document patterns." "Understood," I replied. She slid a printed page across the table. It was a quote, my mother's, from a conference panel 2 years earlier. The original idea came to me during a conversation at home. The auditor looked up. "That conflicts with the patent timeline." "Yes," I said. "It does." She nodded and made a note. When the preliminary findings were shared internally, they were devastating in their restraint. No malice assigned. Just misrepresentation. Repeated. Uncorrected. Beneficial. My mother was called into a review meeting. She asked me not to attend. "I think that would be best," she said, voice brittle. I agreed. Not because I owed her comfort, but because this wasn't my reckoning to witness. When she came out hours later, she looked smaller, older. She didn't speak to me. Not that day. Not the next. Instead, a statement was drafted. Carefully worded. Clarifying prior remarks regarding the origin of the company's core technology. No apology. But no claim either. It was the closest thing to surrender she was capable of. What surprised me most was how little satisfaction I felt. Vindication doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it just feels like space opening up where tension used to live. That night, I sat alone with the original patent registration spread out on my table. I traced my name with my finger. Not to reassure myself, but to remember how long it had taken me to believe I was allowed to protect my own work. My mother had built her identity on proximity to my success. I had built mine in isolation. And now, finally, the difference mattered. But there was still one conversation left. One that no document could handle for me. She asked to meet me 3 days later. Not at the office. Not at home. A cafe halfway between our worlds, chosen carefully. Neutral, public, safe. She was already seated when I arrived, hands wrapped tightly around a cup she wasn't drinking. For the first time in my memory, she looked uncertain about how this would go. I sat across from her without taking my coat off. "I didn't come to argue," she said immediately. "I know," I replied. "You came to explain." She flinched, just slightly. "They're treating me like I lied," she said. "Like I took something that wasn't mine." I didn't respond right away. Because this wasn't about facts anymore. It was about identity. "You didn't steal the work," I said carefully. "You absorbed the credit." She shook her head. "That's not fair." "It's accurate," I replied. She stared at the table, then up at me, eyes sharp again, defensive. "I was there," she said. "Every step. You talked to me about it constantly." "Yes," I said. "I talked. You listened." Her jaw tightened. "You're minimizing me," she snapped. "No," I said softly. "I'm placing you correctly." That landed harder than I expected. She leaned back, crossing her arms. "You always do this. You make me the villain." "I didn't make anything," I replied. "I stopped editing." Silence stretched between us. People laughed nearby. Cups clinked. Life went on. She sighed, long and theatrical. "You don't understand what it's like," she said. "To raise someone brilliant and then be erased." I felt something twist in my chest. Not guilt, not anger. Recognition. "You weren't erased," I said. "You were just no longer centered." Her eyes filled, not with tears, but with something close to panic. "That's the same thing," she whispered. There it was. The truth she never said out loud. I leaned forward slightly. "I needed you to be my mother," I said. "Not my co-author." She laughed bitterly. "You think that was my choice?" I met her gaze. "I think you made it one." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, she didn't have a counter-story ready. You could have included me, she said finally. You could have shared it. I shared everything, I replied. You just wanted ownership. Her shoulders slumped. I wanted to matter, she said. The admission was quiet, unpolished, real. I know, I said. But not at my expense. She nodded slowly, like she was hearing something she'd resisted for years. So what happens now? She asked. I considered that. Now, I said, we stop pretending. She swallowed. And us? I held her gaze, steady. That depends, I said, on whether you can let me exist without borrowing me. Her eyes dropped to the table. She didn't answer. When we stood to leave, she hesitated. You've changed, she said. I put on my coat. No, I replied. I stopped disappearing. I walked away before she could respond. Because some conversations don't end with agreement. They end with boundaries. And the final one, the one that would define everything, was still ahead. The patent renewal notice arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. No drama. No ceremony. Just a reminder that protection isn't a one-time act. It's a choice you make again and again. I signed it without hesitation. What surprised me wasn't how easy it felt. It was how long it had taken me to believe I was allowed to. The company moved forward quietly after that. Marketing materials stabilized. Investor language stopped hedging. My name appeared where it should have always been, without qualifiers, without footnotes. My mother stopped attending meetings. At first, people asked about her. Then they didn't. And that, I realized, was what she'd feared all along. Not exposure, but irrelevance. She called me once more after the renewal. I saw the update, she said. Yes, I replied. I'm not mentioned anymore. I paused. You're acknowledged appropriately, I said. As family. Not as inventor. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know who I am without that story, she admitted. I closed my eyes briefly. That's something only you can decide, I said. She didn't argue. That was new. Months passed. The company grew. Slowly. Intentionally. Built on clarity instead of mythology. I hired people who didn't know my family history. People who asked about process, not pedigree. One afternoon, a junior engineer stopped by my office, nervous. I just wanted to say, she said, seeing your name on the patent, it mattered. I smiled. Good, I said. That's why it's there. That night, I pulled the original registration from my drawer, the same blue folder, edges worn now from use instead of secrecy. I unfolded the paper one last time. Not to defend myself, but to honor the version of me who had worked in silence when no one was watching. The patent didn't just protect an idea. It protected authorship, integrity, selfhood. My mother once claimed the business was built on her ideas. The record told a different story. And for the first time, I let that be enough. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.